You open the fridge, you grab a granola bar labeled paleo. You eat it without thinking twice. You believe you know what your ancestors ate, but the real answer is far stranger. There was no single ancient diet. There was no golden meal plan waiting to be rediscovered. What your ancestors ate depended on where they stood, what season it was, and whether the hunt failed that week. Sometimes they thrived, sometimes they starved. Their stomachs were not built around a philosophy. They were built around survival. Start with the myth. The modern idea of paleo imagines a world of grilled meat and clean protein. Steak for breakfast? No grains, ever. A caveman flexing beside a campfire. Muscles lean, mind clear. That picture is mostly fiction. Anthropologist Catherine Milton spent years studying the diets of wild primates and early human groups, and her research pointed somewhere unexpected. Early humans were not meat-obsessed specialists. They were opportunists. Tubers, insects, fruit when it was in season, bone marrow scraped out with a sharpened rock. Whatever the environment offered, they took it. Why does that matter to you now? Because the human gut did not evolve to expect consistency. It evolved to expect chaos. Picture a small band moving across an open grassland, maybe 2 million years ago. No refrigeration, no agriculture, no stored grain waiting in a barn. If the hunt succeeded, there was meat, and meat meant fat, and fat meant survival through the next lean stretch. If the hunt failed, there were roots, there were nuts, there was whatever could be dug up before nightfall. Feast, then famine. Feast, then famine. Over and over, for hundreds of thousands of years. Your body still remembers that rhythm. It just doesn't know the famine part isn't coming anymore. Here's where the story gets stranger. For a long time, scientists assumed raw meat and raw plants were the default fuel of early hominins. Then, primatologist and biological anthropologist Richard Wrangham proposed something that reshaped the field. He argued that cooking, not meat itself, was the true turning point in human evolution. Cooked food is easier to digest. It unlocks more calories from the same amount of food. Wrangham's cooking hypothesis suggests that once early humans started applying fire to their meals, their guts could shrink, their brains could grow, and the energy that used to go toward digestion could be redirected toward thinking. Fire didn't just keep them warm, it rewired what a human body needed to become. Think about that for a second. The device in your pocket right now, capable of holding every book ever written, might trace part of its origin story back to a campfire and a piece of scorched root vegetable. So if meat wasn't the whole story and cooking mattered this much, what did people actually eat day to day? The honest answer is almost unsatisfying. It depended entirely on geography. Coastal groups ate shellfish, fish, seaweed. Groups near grasslands ate wild grains, ground by hand between stones, long before farming existed. Forest-dwelling groups leaned on fruit, tubers, insects, and whatever small game they could catch. There was no universal ancient diet, because there was no universal ancient landscape. Some researchers estimate that plant foods made up a much larger share of the ancestral diet than the meat-heavy caveman image suggests, especially in warmer climates where game was less reliable and edible plants were abundant year-round. Does that surprise you? It surprised a lot of nutrition scientists, too. One of the loudest voices in early paleo diet research was Lorraine Cordain, whose work in the 1990s and 2000s helped popularize the idea that modern disease stems from eating foods our ancestors never touched, particularly refined sugar, processed grains, and industrial seed oils. Cordain's core argument still holds weight in nutrition science. The human genome has barely changed in 10,000 years, while the modern food environment has changed almost completely. But even Cordain's own critics, including biologist Marlene Zook, pushed back on the idea of a single natural diet frozen in time. Zook's work on human evolution emphasizes something uncomfortable for anyone chasing a perfect ancestral blueprint. Evolution never stopped. Human populations kept adapting after agriculture began, not before it. Some groups evolved the ability to digest milk into adulthood. Some evolved extra copies of genes that help break down starch. The human body has been quietly editing its own instruction manual for thousands of years, long after the first campfire. So there is no single moment you can point to and say, this is what a human is supposed to eat. There is only a very long, very messy negotiation between body and environment. Now, here's the twist that changes how you should think about your own plate. Your ancestors were not eating clean. They were eating available. If a beehive was nearby, they ate honey, sugar, and all. If a fruit tree was in season, they gorged on it, because tomorrow it might be gone. If insects were the only protein source for a stretch of weeks, insects were dinner. Nothing was off limits on principle. Everything was on the table if it kept you alive. What actually made ancient eating different from modern eating wasn't the ingredients. It was the unpredictability. Feast and famine wasn't a lifestyle choice. It was the entire operating system. Your body evolved inside that rhythm, storing fat efficiently when food was abundant, slowing metabolism when it wasn't, treating every calorie like it might be the last one for a while. Now look at your kitchen. Food never runs out. The famine half of the ancient rhythm has vanished, but the feast instinct is still fully online, still whispering to store fat, still treating a drive-through window like a stroke of extraordinary luck. That craving you feel walking past a bakery? That is not weakness. That is 2 million years of scarcity, still running quietly in the background of a brain that has never lived through a famine. Isn't that a strange kind of inheritance? You're not broken. You are not failing some ancient blueprint you were supposed to follow perfectly. You are simply a feast and famine machine, living permanently inside the feast. None of this means there is a perfect ancestral meal plan hiding just out of reach, waiting to fix everything. The truth is less tidy and, honestly, more freeing. Humans have always been adaptable eaters. Roots one season, shellfish the next, insects when nothing else was around. The species didn't survive by eating one correct way. It survived by eating almost any way it had to. So the next time you see a bag of chips labeled paleo approved, remember what that word actually meant once. It never meant purity. It never meant discipline carved in stone. It meant improvisation, in a world with no guarantees, by people who ate whatever kept them alive until tomorrow. You open the fridge again tomorrow morning. This time, you'll know the real answer was never about finding the one true diet. It was about surviving long enough to keep guessing.